Hey gang, today I'm going to do a video on changing the starter on this 2004 Honda Accord. This vehicle sat for about 5 months and the starter seized up on it. So the owner of the car provided me with a starter from CarQuest, and I've had the car in the garage because it's a little cold outside today, but I'm going to change that starter. Now this is again a 2004 Honda Accord with a 3.0 VTEC engine. And I'm going to try to go through the steps to change this without making it too difficult. This is the problem. Listen closely. So here's the situation. This is the starter. As you can see, it's behind the two radiator hoses, and I want to try to leave those in place if I can. I don't want to drain the system if I don't have to, so I'm going to attempt to change it and leave those in place. Now, the battery has been replaced by the owner, so I know that's not a problem. And the clicking sound you heard, if I can show you, is right here. That's the solenoid. So when you turn the key, this engages the starter and it rotates and it starts your engine. So I need to remove the wiring, and of course I'll remove the battery and then remove the starter and then replace it with that. First step I'm going to do is unbolt the battery and get it out of the way. You have a positive terminal and a ground terminal. I'm just going to start with the ground 10mm bolt or nut. Take that loose, lift it up out of the way, go to the positive terminal. Hopefully I can get the wrench on there. Yep. Now this is a good time to point out that this will disconnect everything in the car. So if you have presets on your radio or anything like that, you're going to have to restore those. You also may need to recode your radio. So try to know that information ahead of time, because otherwise you're going to have to fight with it and figure out how to get back into your radio. That's a security feature they put in these cars, and unfortunately that's what you have to do. So 10mm nuts on these. Need to get those out of the way. Now those rods will fall off to the side, so just know that they unhook pretty easily. Just a simple turn. Not too bad. Now I can see that I should be able to get the starter out by removing the battery tray. That'll give me some clearance because it's a little bit tight right now. Let me show you. Alright, so here's the battery tray. I can see there's a 10mm bolt right here, which is just holding the cable. So that's just a little bracket that I would take loose so that it's not trying to fight me as I come out. And then there are two bolts here that are 12mm, and I think that might be it. I don't know. I might have to remove another one, but I'm going to start with those two back in the corner there and this one here and get those out of the way. So I'm going to start with the 10mm. I'm going to put that bolt back in the hole. I don't want to lose it. Now I'll go for the back two, the 12mm. Aha. Must be one more. It appears there's two more that are going out into the frame rail. I'm not going to be able to film that, but I'll show you where they're at once I get this bracket out of the way. And it looks like I will need to remove this 10mm bolt right here that is supporting the airbox. So while I'm here, I'll go ahead and get that out of the way. And now I'm not going to film it, but I'm going to have to get in behind through this hole right here to get these other two bolts out. Alright, that wasn't so bad. It turns out the two bottom mounts are slotted. So that angle portion that goes back into the front frame rail has two 12mm bolts. Just take those loose and you can slide this up and out of the way. Now, the next part of this is going to be getting that starter out of there. You've got a power nut or a power cord connection. That's your primary, and then there's a secondary. That's like the trigger mechanism. Let me see. Yep. So that's just a slotted tang type deal. Might say, I think some people might call it alligator clip. I don't know. It's just a slot. So that's off. This should be a 12mm bolt. I can check that quick. Yep. Yep, 12mm nut, I should say. So that'll take that loose. And then I'll have to figure out the other sizes. There are two bolts that hold the starter to the car itself, or to the engine. So if I can light it up there. There you can see that gold one. That's the top starter bolt. And I'll have to figure out the size on that. I haven't looked at it yet. And there's going to be two of those. So if I show you this replacement starter, just note that the connections may be a different size. This may or may not be a 12, I don't know. And then there's your spot where you plug in, and that's where the upper bolt goes. So there's also a lower bolt. So just know that there's two bolts that hold that in place. I like the nut. It has a built-in washer. So I may, if this is the same size, I'll transfer this to the new starter, because I think the other one just probably has a loose nut and washer. I like this one better. So that's out of the way. Now I just need to get the large bolts. And those are a 17mm. I might need some leverage. I'm going to use my extension ratchet from Harbor Freight. Just extends the handle out a little longer. Let me get something bigger. Alright, I'm moving up to a 1/2 inch breaker bar. There we go. And the lower one, see if I can't get this off. Now here's something I've learned from years and years of working on cars. Take out the hardest bolt first. Don't go for the easy one and then fight with the other one. Get the hard one out of the way, and then the weight is not resting on the last bolt that you're struggling to get out. This was more of a problem with like big old Chevy and Ford starters. There we go. Nice long bolt. Now I can support this a little bit and get that bolt out of there instead of it binding on the bottom one. There we go. Top bolt's a little shorter. There it is. Not too bad. Now I'll compare this to the replacement one. They look like the exact same starter. Same hole pattern layout. Yep. The only difference that I see, again, as I talked about, is the nut that came on the original one versus the nut that's on the replacement one. Oh, look at that. It's got a similar type of washer device. So it's up to you which one you want to use. I'll probably still use the original one just because I like it, and set this one aside. The only other thing that I see that's different at all is this extra little bracket. And that was really probably there to hold a clip to hold a wiring harness. That's the kind of style that is right there. I don't know why it's not on the other one, but this may fit various models of the Honda, so that bracket may be included on other cars. I'll leave it on there. I don't want to mess with it and take it off, because unless it's in the way, it's not worth it for me to remove it. So now I'm going to reinstall this starter. Alright, so I'm going to fit this starter back in place and put the upper bolt back in to hold it. So just have to get the wires out of the way, feed it into the hole, and it's really self-aligning. It's got the body of it only fits one way into that hole. You can rotate it, but it's centered. So I'll get the bolt in and tighten that up, or snug it to get it to hold it in place. Now I just have a little bit of tension on that, so it's not tight. You know, I can still move this around a little bit, and that's just to help me get bottom bolt in. If I need to move it a little bit, I can. Now, I don't know what the torque is. I know it was pretty darn tight because I had to use that 1/2-inch breaker bar. Now, of course, Honda probably has the specs published somewhere. If you want to look them up, that's fine. I just know that I'm going to make it good and tight. German torque, good and tight. So I'm going to put the 1/2-inch breaker bar and the extension back on. I guess I can snug that down with the regular ratchet first, just to save a little bit of time. And honestly, they probably over torqued these because it's really not going anywhere. I mean, it's in a fixed location. Now with the starter in place, I just need to reattach the wiring, and that's pretty simple and straightforward. The tang gets to slide on, and then this one should be pretty close to lining right up. And like I said, I'm going to use the original nut, assuming that it fits the threads okay. Yep. Now I don't want to get crazy on this torque. It is a copper shaft, so again, you could probably look this up. I just know from experience. And then this rubber boot needs to slip around that wire to keep anything from contacting it. So there you go. Now I'm going to put the tray back in. And I will point out, on those bolts that are on the frame rail, the washer, you can see here, will slide around on the bolt. So to save yourself some trouble, make sure that bolt is away from the threads, because you got to slip down in between the frame and the washer. So I just made sure those were back, and now I can slide the bracket back into place. Easy enough. I'll put in the two top bolts just to hold it, and then I'll put in the little bolt that holds the air filter box. I'd rather get them all started while everything is loose and I can wiggle it around a little bit. Now I'll just tighten those bolts up and reinstall the battery. I also want to point out, don't forget to install the little bracket that holds the wiring, and don't drop the bolt. Now, as I said earlier, these hooks, there's square cutouts in the battery box. There's a tab that comes up, there's a hole in it, and these hook into those. So pretty easy to get into. Just know that you might have to fight with it a little bit while you're getting pieces in place, because you may get one in place and the other one fights with you. So what I like to do is I'll get one in, get it in the hole, get it in the upper bracket, and get a nut started on it. Just snug enough to hold it in place. And then the other one, same thing. I'll slide this around a little bit, get it in the hole, get the bracket down on it, and get the nut on. And then it's just a matter of tightening everything back up gently. That'll take care of that. Now I want to reattach the battery terminals. So I will attach the positive terminal first and snug that down, and then the ground. Now the reason for that is if I slip with the wrench while the ground is disconnected, like I can, the positive, it's not going to want to ground out to anything if I slip and make contact with a piece of metal. So I want to take care of the positive first, and that way it's secure and safe. The ground, if I were to touch metal with that, if there was some exposed metal of the car, it won't arc because it's the ground terminal, which is grounding the whole car. So that's it. Now let's see if it starts. Well, there you go. I don't think that was a very difficult job. Other than getting some stuff out of the way to change the starter, it was a pretty simple job. Like I said, there are torque specs probably available online. I don't know what those torques are. If you want to look them up, that's great. I'm just used to using my hands as a guide whenever I do these sort of things. I will point out, as far as tools, pretty simple. I know I use a 10mm, 12mm, 17mm sockets. I did use a 10mm wrench, and really that was about it. Not very complicated. I do point out that you will need something strong to break the torque loose on the starter, as I showed you, but all in all, not a bad job. Shouldn't take you an hour to change this out and have your car back on the road. So once again, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I know I do a variety of videos, and most of my stuff is old Mustangs and Camaros and stuff like that, but I do these kind of videos as well because people can do this kind of maintenance at home without spending a bunch of money. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, share it, subscribe, all those cool things help this channel grow, and I'll keep making both videos, old cars and repairs you can do yourself. Thanks for watching. Hey gang, today I'm going to do a video on changing the starter on this 2004 Honda 3.0 VTEC. I'll pull that boot back a little further and get a look at it, see how it's attached. But that is the little bracket that holds the wiring. And don't drop the bolt.